The first series of Bates Motel was pretty good. In my review I said there was a lot of room for improvement, but it was still a surprisingly good series. However, due to some massive flaws, I only gave the first series a 7.5 out of 10. Weirdly enough, literally every problem I had with the first season is resolved in this season, for the most part anyway. The pacing is much more balanced, the characters are much more developed, the writing's really good, and the show has become incredibly unpredictable. Sure, it was kind of unpredictable before, but not like the second series was. The story of the second season pretty much follows on from the end of the previous season, almost the exact way I predicted it would. They dedicate the first couple of episodes to tying the loose ends of the first season. Norman doesn't know that he killed Miss Watson and he's grieving over her immensely. All he knows is that he got in her car and that he has her pearl necklace. Norman wants to bond more with Norman and Dylan, who is growing more and more distant. Norman goes to the city council to try and get the bypass that is being built in the town cancelled. She then starts to associate with Nick Ford, a mysterious man who is pretty much the underground leader of the entire town. Dylan is still all caught up in a massive drug war between rival families. His storyline isn't as bland and uninteresting as it was in the first series, and I found myself actually really getting into it. Norman and Emma are no longer together and Emma has moved on completely. She starts to go out with a guy who gave her a weed muffin in the first series, although the relationship is pretty much forgotten about halfway through the series. As you may remember, one of my biggest problems with the first series was the love triangle and the character of Bradley. I was originally hoping that they would develop Bradley a little more and make her a likable character. In the first couple of episodes, they really do. She is still grieving about her father and will stop at nothing to find the man who killed him. She shoots the guy who she thinks killed her dad and then has to run away to protect herself. Apart from the first 2 or 3 episodes, Bradley is pretty much left completely out of the series, which I thought was a really smart move. Norman starts to work backstage at a community theatre's newest musical production where he meets a girl named Cody. Cody is very rebellious and is instantly hated by Norma because she becomes a bad influence on Norman. Multiple episodes of the show revolve around their relationship, and I have to say that it was much more engaging than any of the relationships in the first series. Cody has an abusive father, and after sticking up for her, Norman accidentally pushes Cody's father down the stairs and kills him. Norman is taken to the police station where he's processed and interviewed. However, when they put his DNA into the system, they find he is an exact match to an unknown semen sample found inside of Miss Watson's body. Sheriff Romero starts to have his suspicions and wants to try and find out whether Norman did or not actually kill her. A lot more happens in this series, but I don't really want to spoil some of the major parts because a lot of really awesome stuff happens in this series and the ending is absolutely jaw-dropping. The story improves over the previous series and you find yourself much more involved than you did previously. The show is much more exciting, dark, and surprisingly fun. I was especially surprised by how exciting Dylan's drug plot line got. It really does take up a large portion of the series and is much better developed and in the long run much more interesting than before. However, it is a little bit out of place in the series and just feels like they want to be like every other drug show on TV. All of the plot twists in the series are shocking and never do you feel bored. In fact, I don't think I got angry about anything in the series, which means my cons category later will be very short. One of my biggest complaints about the previous series was the lack of character development and unlikability of some of the main characters. Well, surprisingly, this was pretty much completely fixed in this series. Norman is much more likable and doesn't come off as much of a dick as he did in the previous series. Norma is much more sympathetic, and despite the fact there are times where she does get a bit unlikable, I never hated her like I did at some points previously. Dylan was without a doubt the biggest improvement. He wasn't bland, he wasn't unimportant, and he wasn't boring. You could tell his motives, you knew exactly what he wanted, and his strong determination made the character much more interesting. The main other character to be developed would be Sheriff Romero. He becomes a dirty cop who only cares about stopping dangerous people. He literally beats up someone as a warning in one scene. There's one episode where he literally frames someone for a murder they didn't commit. They promised to develop Sheriff Romero, and they didn't disappoint. There are a few new characters, but only two made an impact on me, namely Nick Ford and Cody. Cody, as I said earlier, is very rebellious. She doesn't care about getting into trouble, she just does what she wants to do. However, she constantly lives in fear of her abusive alcoholic father. She always bottled up her emotions and tried to act like she was very hard to the core. I really like the character and would have liked to see her more. Maybe she'll return, but I kind of doubt it. Nick Ford is one of the main villains in the series. He has a very villainous presence whenever he's on screen. He reminds me slightly of Gus from Breaking Bad, just not as evil or creepy. You never know what he's going to do next, similar to Jake Abernathy from the previous series. However, he just wasn't as thrilling as Jake was. Jake was very creepy and he would do horrific thing after horrific thing. He showed Norman that he wasn't to fuck with. Nick Ford was more words than actions. He was still a good villain though. The acting is very much like in the previous series. Freddie Highmore and Vera Farmiga are the only two actors who actually notably improve. Vera Farmiga is not much different than in the previous series. In fact, neither of the two are. However, she puts much more emotion into the character and you never doubted her performance for a second. Freddie Highmore felt much crazier when he needed to be. I remember one scene distinctly where he genuinely creeped me out. He felt much more like Norman Bates and I really started to think he was the perfect choice for the role. Everyone else pretty much is the same, so I can't really say much about them. Honestly, I don't have many problems with this series. The show improved vastly on most of the problems with the previous series. However, I can think of a couple of problems. My biggest problem is probably the lack of Emma. I was hoping to see her more developed, and really see her become a much better character than before. But she just kind of stays the same. This isn't a major problem because I still liked her, but she just didn't seem to appear as much as before. Another problem I had with the show is that a couple of times it fell into the Walking Dead cliffhanger problem, where the show will end on an exciting cliffhanger, then progress slowly through the next episode until it reaches another big cliffhanger. All the episodes were still good, so it's nowhere near as bad as Walking Dead seasons 2 onwards. I don't have many other flaws. The only other flaws I have are tiny little inconsistencies I noticed, nothing really worth noting. Bates Motel Series 2 did exactly what I thought was possible. Improved vastly. I knew the show had a ton of potential, and with its second series it relished this potential and didn't waste any of it at all. The show brings back a lot of the tension and atmosphere from the first series and triples it. The writing is much smarter and the series felt really exciting. The last 2 episodes of the series are without a doubt the best in the entire show so far, and 2 of the best TV show episodes I've seen in a while, and maybe even ever. I couldn't be any happier with the second series of Bates Motel. It gave me exactly what I wanted, with a few exceptions here and there. I gave Series 1 of Bates Motel a 7.5 out of 10. Well, I give Series 2 a 9.5 out of 10. Yep, it improved itself by 2 full numbers. Series 3 starts soon here in the UK and it's already started in the US. I'll definitely review it, but I'm not sure when because I wrote the review for this literally a couple weeks after Bates Motel Season 2 finished, and that's been almost a year and it's only just being edited and finished now, so yeah. Thanks for watching Channel Changer, and I'll see you on the other side.